Well, greetings and welcome back for another anime Anticlimax. This is SeptumSin versus the world. I'm here with Brittany and with Jacob, and we've got Roger coming in later on. So, it's been a little bit of time. I had to take a bit of a break on this, so we're switching around the schedule for the month, but we're okay with that because it's less time. So I'm going to do a shorter thing and then do the long one in June. But this time we're covering the anime Servant Service, which is a slice of life anime. Actually, this is the beginning of my quarter, I guess, of anime stuff. And a lot of the stuff I'm doing is stuff that's not necessarily readily discussed or has kind of fallen out of discussion. This one I don't think ever was picked up in discussion. So it'll be good to have this one brought back to life. It's a delightful little slice of life, romantic comedy set in the Department of, social services, essentially, in Japan, with a bunch of social workers. So why don't I go ahead and I'll talk with y'all about if y'all had heard of this and if this was your first time watching. So Jake, was this your first time watching this?
Yes, this was a first time. It's one I've been wanting to see for a while. It's been on the radar for some time. I know that this anime was originally that it was made basically by the same people behind the Working/Wagnaria franchise, and they have done some cross promotional stuff between the two franchises. Which I have not gotten to see any of that. But I feel like Wagnaria made an appearance at least once in this series.
Or looking like anyway.
I don't think any of the characters did. But the art style is recognizable in a lot of ways. I had also caught my attention as an Aniplex of America release, and I doggedly held on to the hope that they would do a Blu-ray release, and my hopes were dashed when they only did a DVD and they dropped production ages ago, and now it's super out of print, and I am really peeved with myself that I didn't pick it up when I had the chance. All the more so now that I've seen it, because it is a very fun show. It has a lot of the same things that I enjoyed about Working. A lot of the same, even though the characters are eccentrics in some ways, they're definitely not what I would call necessarily your normal average people. They're not quite as exaggerated, and for the most part, the section manager accepted, than most of the characters in Working. I would say they're a little more grounded here. And it's one of those ones that fits that vibe of a workplace comedy that you feel that there's a lot of truth to it. I have worked in the restaurant industry, and I have worked in a low-ranking government position. So I actually have firsthand experience with both of these areas of work. And both series just vibe with me in a lot of ways that I, without necessarily feeling like, oh my God, I just got to relive this. It's more of, oh, I get that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's a fun one. The romances in it are interesting. There is a different assortment of them. A couple of the pairings are a little more awkward than others. But overall, I thought it was a fun show, and I'm glad I finally got to see it. And I keep holding out the hope that one day I'll be able to put it in the collection.
Maybe they'll do a Blu-ray release.
We can hope. We can hope.
But knowing Aniplex, it'll be like $200.
I think it's probably out of their hands at this point with all the different Isn't pretty much their whole catalog being handled by Crunchyroll now stateside?
Essentially, I mean, basically, I think that Aniplex, they put it out under because it's all under the Sony umbrella. It's Sony.
Yeah.
And so my guess is that when they think that they can sell something for a lot of money, they release it under Aniplex. That's my theory. Because they still do Aniplex releases. So that's my standing theory. Like when the new Monogatari stuff finally hits physical, it's going to be Aniplex. You know it is.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they still trot that label out. There's no doubt about it. But that's like I said, the question is, this, as you pointed out, there hasn't been a huge amount of discussion about this series. It has a very strong likelihood of disappearing in the stateside, at least, which is very annoying.
Which is why it's being covered tonight.
Indeed.
So, Brittany, was this your first experience with the series?
Nope. I actually kind of started this series a while back. I never finished the series until recently. Until we watched this. So, it's definitely interesting. And it's a little more disturbing because, yeah, I work in this position. Not social services. Now, the position isn't directly stated in social services. It's just kind of like a government civil servant job.
Yeah, basically, it could be social services, DMV, all the basic stuff, you know.
Yeah,
but
the ward office.
The absolute description from Lucy, our main character in the series, is my job. So, this is literally my job, the anime. Except for, I don't know of any romantic involvement or talking bunnies or crazy high schoolers wanting to work there. Yeah.
I never came into a high schooler really wanting to work my job in my position.
It'd be more interesting with your position.
You've never worked for a middle-aged man whose avatar is a motorized stuffed animal?
Oh, that was my last 5 bosses.
My boss is a huge Lego fan, but not a rabbit.
So is that? Did you have anything else for the first impression?
Not really.
Okay. So for me, I looked at this and I admit I kept passing it over because I was looking Aniplex prices super high, even for the DVDs, always super high every single time. So whenever I would see it, I would just look at it for a moment and I would think,
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47. It's a trap.
But eventually I was like, it's cheap. I'm going to add it. It might be fun. And then I went ahead and watched it because it came in kind of a loose condition. None of the stuff was damaged, but when it comes loose, then it automatically becomes used, and I prioritize used. Which I am happy to say I have nothing used in the collection that I have not seen now. So I looked at it and I immediately fell in love with it. I admit. I liked working and I could relate a little bit, but I never really worked in the restaurant industry. I worked more in I worked fast food, which has some similarities, but it is different, very different. Here, however, I worked in casework for, good God, for 12 years doing this type of work. Now my work is much more therapy-based, and I don't do night work that's therapy-based anymore. So, but when I was working, I was doing stuff like this, and I was working with social services. I was processing forms, looking at paperwork, dealing with people coming in. on the front end. So I really could relate to it. And there's something about that just connected. I mean, the thing like that, the old woman that kept coming in to just talk, I had that person all the time that would come in and do that. And it was just in general fun. I enjoyed it. And a lot of the things I loved about Wagnaria, I liked about this. And so I just thought to myself, this is kind of a sad thing to see. To see this as sort of like an undiscovered gem, because I didn't hear a lot of. I would hear in the main talking points. I occasionally listen to people talk about it, and I never heard them talk about this series. So I wanted to make sure that had a voice. So that's why I went ahead and brought this up. That's the same thing for most of these. I think the one that's had the most chatter about it over the years is going to be our next one, which is Robot Carnival. But even that one's not talked about a ton these days. So let me just run down the characters real quick, and then we'll hit the plot. So our main character, if you could say there's a main in this, is Lucy Yamagami. Now, Lucy has joined the we'll just call them social workers just for that, social work field, in order to get revenge. Because Lucy is not her full name. Her full first name is not fully listed because they never bothered to list all of it.
Right.
But what they did manage to scroll down from what has been revealed in the manga and the anime is Lucy Kimiko Aki Airi Shiori Rine Yoshiho Chihioko Yano Fumika, Chitose, Sanai, Mikiko, Ichika, Yukino, Rena, and then Eri, and it kind of cuts off as it keeps going. Because her parents were like, they were undecided of the name, and they said, well, you know what, let's just do all of them. And a social worker approved it, and she is very mad with that person and wants revenge. So she decided to go into the field in order to get vengeance. She loves books a bit much, almost like the Read or Die protagonist, matter of fact, and has giant boobs for her stature. Normally I wouldn't say that, but it is a big part of her character, apparently. So
in more ways than one.
Literally and in story. So I do need to mention that, but otherwise she is fairly naive in all other things. She's even not really that much of a tsundere type character. She has some traits of it, but not really.
Not really.
And
she's just more naive.
She's on the one guy for a while, but then stops like midway through the series. So,
but she has a reason. Her whole reason is she doesn't believe anybody will love her because of her name.
Also, he does initially come across as an abrasive, womanizing, lazy, good for nothing.
Well, we'll get to Taka in a minute. But what do y'all think of Lucy as a character?
I can vouch for the name factor. My position, I handle paternities for the state. So I see what parents name their children. So
if you were the one who approved and disapproved names, if you saw that name come across your desk, would you approve it?
I have had to go through and type up someone's name who was 5 first names, 7 middle names, and 2 last names.
Wow.
So it's not unheard of. But
that person might be coming back for revenge.
My desk twice in a year, so it's rare.
Yeah, like I encountered someone today who I think she has about 6 or 7 names. It's, of course, one of them is one of those last names that's like a Van something, so it's kind of really one word, but it's 2. But yeah, you definitely see some weird ones. And I do see ones when I'm filling out applications, I'm like, who names their kid this? It's like, but
Oh, a lot of kids are named Legend in this state.
it wouldn't surprise me.
They're anything but.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I need to pay my
Lucy is she is one of those characters who you could definitely say that when it comes to relationships, especially when romance is involved, that she full on has the oblivious trait. But yeah, it's mostly just she is scarred by her name. It makes her extremely defensive with most people, hard to trust people, and she just loves books. And that's really, her social awkwardness, given those two things, is perfectly understandable.
She's a book otaku.
Yeah, she basically she's a book hoarder by many ways, and she even goes without like eating proper meals because she is spending all of her money on books.
Oh yeah, it's like a running bit of dialogue. Like, the guy Hasebe will ask her out, and she'll be like, "Well, it's the end of the pay period. I don't have any money left." Or there's a book out today and I have to get that, and it's yeah. She knows where her priorities are.
Then we have Yutaka Hasebe, who is, of course, our one male newbie. He comes from a family that apparently all are government workers. So he's a long line of government workers, civil servants. And he is basically a genius in most things. But because everything is so easy for him, he gets very bored very easily and mainly just wants to slack off. Matter of fact, he makes a point of it. He's also a little bit of a womanizer, trying to get every person's email, and succeeds with everybody except for Lucy, which is the one he really wants at the end, and ends up being the eventually the love interest of Lucy as we go on. His character, I will say, is the one that had the most emotional growth throughout the entirety of this, because he started being kind of a flat 2D type character, and he actually gained some nuance towards the end of the series. I was actually very surprised at it, but I was surprised how much I actually liked him. What would y'all think about it?
Well, I mean, he grows when the fear of God hits him, and he realizes who's responsible for Lucy's name.
Right.
So that's when he kind of changes.
Well, no, he was kind of doing it before, because like he had an attraction to her that was different from his usual kind of. Yes, he had this obsession with getting everyone's emails, and he was chatting up every woman he saw. And he started doing that with Lucy, but for some reason, she just put him off his footing, even from an early, like he kept forgetting to get her email and building it. I mean, you know how sometimes when you got something that's perfectly off the cuff and there's nothing.
Well, I mean, he's the laid back worker.
Right.
He's super smart.
Right.
So he can get away with it. But
right.
he's the I will find a way to slack.
Right.
Kind of person.
Well, in a way, I can almost relate to how he is at work, because I am the only one on my team that gets all of their work done like really quick. So I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs, which is why I sometimes get things done during the day, because unless people are like flowing in, everybody else is sitting there backed up with paperwork, and I'm just like, I just finished all the paperwork.
I'm usually the Lucy of the group, where I ask to take on more work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then, of course, when they're doing the initial tour, when our character Ichimiya is leading around the three newbies and showing them the ropes, of course, Hasebe is the one that speaks up, like, so when are breaks, and where where do we go to get drinks and smoke and whatever? That's what he wants to know in the tour.
Take every break you can.
Yes, exactly. But but yeah, it's I agree. He does show some growth as the series goes on. They all mostly show
a little bit. Yeah,
they all show a little bit. Some more than others. I would argue almost that the little sister shows quite a bit too. Ichimiya, the elder, the brother, probably doesn't show as much as any of the others overall.
But even he does. So
even he has a little bit, yeah. But yeah.
Well, let's move on then to the third newbie, Seiya Miyoshi. Who she is a 24-year-old college grad, so she's actually more educated than the rest of them.
Dropout.
Dropout, yes. Well, actually, it says graduate here.
I thought she had left school early to go into the workforce.
She left before going for her master's. So
okay.
It would have been bachelor's equivalent.
Okay.
And she ends up having kind of awkward relations. She's very soft-spoken, very kind of easily intimidated. The old woman that talks forever ends up finding her, and that seems to be most of her day.
Yeah.
Easily bullied and so on. But there's a reason why she's soft-spoken, because when she does, she's very blunt and usually ends up hurting people's feelings, which she realizes is not good. So there's actually a running thing about how she's broken up with guys before, and and she is bothered by the fact that she ends up breaking their hearts terribly every time.
Right. It's like she is not a mean person by any means, but she takes on all the stress from other people because she doesn't want to upset them. She doesn't want to hurt them. She takes on everything. And then, when she lets it out, it can be harsh. Although it's still usually pretty quiet. And, it's more like she'll say a comment that cut a whole lot deeper than anyone thought it was going to. But,
So what do you think of Seiya, Brittany?
I feel she's just your atypical anime, timid, sort of stick of dynamite. Where you have the timid girl until they break. Personality. Although, she's kind of quiet in her breaking. Not like super explosive like you get in some series.
I mean, one thing I will say about a lot of the characters in this, they use a lot of archetypes and stuff like that, they like to put a little twist on them, which doesn't make them different from all series, but definitely it is less than some lazier series that just go with the archetype. Which I will give it, especially for like I say, the kind of lazy guy, or even this one here, the next one, Megumi Chihaya, which I'm sure is Jacob's favorite character.
I like Chihaya, yes,
but she's kind of the one that kind of has that flat affect type character, who's just kind of there to do her job. She knows the job. She's a temp worker, but then as you get to know her, there's a little bit more, because she's extremely into cosplay.
Yes.
Which makes her, which suddenly her entire disposition brightens up. And you see that she gets a lot more into their friendships and relationships as they go. and she's even dating one of the characters that you wouldn't expect. And I still wonder why she dates him, but at the same time,
As does she frequently.
But still, I was surprised. I usually don't like these characters; they usually annoy me. But because she has a little bit more depth than some of them, I actually did get to like her and pull for her in some cases. But what do y'all think of our cosplay obsession?
She, in a way, she's kind of an interesting foil for Miyoshi, because both of them can be quite brutally blunt, actually. But she's the one you expect it from. Like, she almost, that's her demeanor, is that sort of, I'm not putting on any airs, I'm not dancing around, I just tell it like I see it. That's like her way of doing it. But even so, she, and both of them are incredibly perceptive, both them and Hasebe. All three of them are incredibly perceptive, and the other two don't catch on near as often. But the fact that her boyfriend doesn't get it, and the fact that his sister doesn't get it, does cause her a lot of trouble, because it's one time that she needs to be blunt and she can't bring herself to do it. And that becomes a running gag later on, more or less. But yeah, other than that, she's kind of like the calm voice of reason, except when cosplay's involved. And then she gets upset.
But it's kind of cool that she has that one thing that brings her personality out a little bit more.
Yeah.
What about you, Brittany?
I mean, she's very much, in my opinion, the blunt office worker. And the more you work in an office environment, the more you'll realize that's sort of like your veteran worker that's just sort of beaten down by the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, this is how we do it. Yes. But then you add on the quirk of, yeah, she has a boyfriend who doesn't want to explain that they have a relationship. And it's kind of an interesting quirk and frustrating at the same time. Like, ugh.
Out of the relationships, that's the one that I wish I had had more time to get to know or explore, because I felt like I needed a little bit more explanation. They kind of went into it a little bit why she likes him, and showed some growth with him, but I feel like that one needed more time to.
Oh, absolutely! I would have loved to have an episode just on their relationship.
I mean, I like their date episode; it was really good there. But any case, speaking of the boyfriend, Taishi Ichimiya, which is all the newbies' direct supervisor. Mm-hmm. He is kind of easily bullied. He doesn't really like being the leader, and I've seen bosses like that. They're kind of I really don't like being the boss, but I am doing this anyway because I have to. Right. He's kind of easily bullied, mostly by his sister, and but that does have a caring nature to himself, which does his kind disposition, I guess, makes him somewhat likable. And he always gets dumped before Christmas, usually because that's his sister's birthday, and he has to prioritize his sister. So usually the girlfriends are like, screw you. But he found a good girlfriend in Megumi because she usually has a big thing that she's prepping for during that time. So she wants that time anyway. So it works for them. But still, what did y'all think of him? He was probably the least well-developed character as we went for me. But there
wasn't much for me to really latch on with him other than he gets bullied by his sister. And technically, the entire staff gets bullied by his sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to her in a minute, too.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll get to her at the end of the main characters.
Well, I have to say, of all the characters, he kind of exists to be a foil for the others. Like he is the guy that Megumi has to try to figure out how to pursue a full relationship with.
In a good way.
Yes. He's the guy that his sister has a horrible brother complex with. He's the guy that has to manage the rest of them in the absence of the section chief. He's kind of the middleman. And he's very functional, but I do think he's probably a little underdeveloped next to the others.
So let's just go ahead and cover the sister. I'll round it out with the boss and the other guy, and then I'm going to be done with those because the rest are minor characters. So Toko Ichimiya, which is the little sister who is obsessed with the civil servant path, to where she tells everybody over there how to do their jobs.
Which anyone who's worked in government service has been told how to do their job at least once, probably more than once.
About once a day.
Not yet, actually.
I've had that happen lots of times.
Yes.
Of course, a lot of that time also was in my crisis job, which is usually like, well, you can tell me I do my job, but I've got the police backing me up, so good luck enforcing that. If I had a couple of dollars for every time they told me they'd have my job. This is why I'm glad I no longer work with Crisis anymore.
Yeah.
But she is definitely ill-tempered. She does love her brother, but not in the way that they kind of put it off as, because really and truly, she's not in to stay with him forever in sort of a weird, creepy, romantic way like a lot of these are done. She wants to be able to get on her feet so she can move out and let him, kind of succeed. And I don't think he gets that entirely about her. But she's also kind of thick-headed. So even though Megumi has tried multiple times to let her know that she's in a relationship with her brother, she still can't seem to get it through her head. She just feels like, oh, it's so good that y'all are such good friends. Yes. But it is still kind of interesting. She annoyed me at first, but she grew on me as the series went on. Especially the more I realized that she was not just your typical tsundere character, but that she actually did have some reasons for doing what she did. It wasn't the typical bullshit reason that you see in things like, say, Onii.
It is interesting though how she is always drawn with that little anger symbol on, even when she's not really angry, it's still there. It's kind of an interesting choice they made with that.
So, what are your thoughts, Brittany?
She's the annoying brat that I would probably get fired yelling at. Be like, you son of a bitch.
Right.
But no, I haven't had to deal with one like her on my end, because I don't deal with people face to face. So most of the time I'm dealing with somebody on the phone. Well, no, actually, I had somebody tell me I need to identify myself before they identify that they're the person I need to speak to, which is kind of difficult to do when you're handling sensitive subjects. So.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, she's the annoying little sister trope. they are, to say a dime a dozen is putting dimes to waste. Almost every anime has this trope somewhere. It's just, you're gonna find that annoying character that they eventually try to reform. I don't feel she ever reforms, but they don't really give her much character development as a character.
They played her cards early, I think, really, because she really wanted to get hired after school instead of going to college, just so that she could get out of her brother's way and let him live his life early, which was the big redeeming feature of her over a lot of the little sister types. And then, but after they did that, it just kind of went nowhere.
Well, I mean, again, you had some other stuff like the whole aspect of Megumi trying to figure out how to let her know what was up with her brother. They also had a little bit of a thing with the section chief. It was kind of a running gag that if she found out that they took their orders from a little robotic bunny, that they all were terrified of this happening. And her best friend Canon happens to be the section chief's daughter. She also was terrified of this happening.
Which they should be, because it's slightly inappropriate to be taking orders from a stuffed rabbit. But
so that added a little bit of an element that was hanging overhead. So there were things, but yeah, I'll admit they could have done more.
And so far, every character we've mentioned is in the picture that we have up here.
Most of them, yeah.
Yep, you've got Lucy in the very front. You have Kenzo riding on her shoulder, which we'll come to soon. We've got then in the back of her, you've got Yutaka, and then behind her, Saya, then Megumi, then Taishi, and then finally Toko. But the last of the ones that are considered main characters, and I'm going to cover at least one other character because I do feel like he does have some role to play. But we're going to talk about Kenzo Momoi, which is their boss, the section chief. He has crippling, I guess, really agoraphobia, because I'm sorry, you'd have to do what he's doing.
How did he get a job with his crippling agoraphobia?
But apparently, he was able to do it by taking on the role as a remote-controlled stuffed rabbit. Even when he was young, apparently, in the field, he was doing this sort of weird remote work before it was very popular. Of course, most of the office workers don't really care much for this. They kind of feel awkward by the fact that it is, which I understand.
Yeah.
And he has a hard time with the insubordination because of that, which is understandable, because it's hard to take a stuffed rabbit seriously. But
especially
the robotics in it has got to be freaking amazing.
Yes.
As much as it does.
Especially has trouble with them taking him seriously when we come to realize that he likes slacking off just as much as Hasebe does. And in fact, they sometimes do it together. They'll sometimes trade info on where to slack off. You do have to wonder, though, if he has this crippling social anxiety in the first place, kind of makes you wonder how he was able to marry and procreate and raise a daughter who is doting as his daughter is. It does. You'd have to wonder a little bit.
Well, the writers are on drugs. I mean, there's only one thing you can say about that.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die. Please.
Of course, the absentee boss seems to be a trope with this company, because it's similar with in Wagnaria, where the boss is constantly looking for his lost wife and only rarely shows up to work. So it's kind of a different variation on a theme, but
Well, this is the most fantasy aspect of this entire series because
Oh, yeah.
there's no way in heck he would have been hired like that.
oh yeah.
But still, what did you think of the character, Brittany?
I want to know how to get robotics that way. And if I could do my job remotely as a rabbit, I would.
Could be interesting.
Unfortunately, I have to be around books.
I'll admit, if my boss was able to do their job remotely like that, I would say, I want that accommodation.
Yeah, makes sense.
So there are a bunch of minor characters here. I'm not going to go into them all, but I did want to mention Joji Tanaka, which is the grandson of Mrs. Tanaka, who is the one that talks Saya's ear off. Essentially, she wanted to introduce her grandson, who is a 22-year-old banker, because he's so responsible and so nice. And it turns out that he's always been a rival of Yutaka. And it really goes to the old trope of the genius versus the hard worker. And in this case, the genius always wins. And this bothers him a lot. And this dude is overly serious and becomes kind of a love interest for Saya as the series goes, where it could, I think, lead, if the series continues on, to them having more feelings for one another. Because it's starting to have it having sparks of it towards the end of the series. But what do y'all think of him as a character?
He's kind of annoying, but and I think saying love interest with what we have here is a little bit strong, but Saya goes from detesting him to seeing that he has some merit.
I think if this went 24 episodes, you'd probably see more of that relationship unfolding. Just like I think you would probably see more depth of the relationship with Megumi and Taishi.
He epitomizes exactly why I'm single. He is very much every guy I, try to have a date with. And it's sad.
He is single-minded, for one. There's like one date he goes on with Miyoshi where she at one point stops him and says, she says, you've talked about Hasebe this whole time. Please talk about something else. And he just randomly starts talking banking in the driest, most boring way. And that actually causes her to start cracking up. And she's actually, it's the first time, I think, since because we got to back up and say that, first of all, he cornered and practically abducted Yamagami at one point, because he saw her as a way to compete with Hasebe. And that's the only reason he forced her into a date. And Miyoshi, she hated him for that. And she went on this date with him basically because he just wouldn't stop and just wouldn't listen to reason and whatever. And she basically is like, okay, I'll go out with you. Basically, she's trying to put a stop to it. And then, when he does that, when he just shifts gears and starts talking banking, it just cracks her up. She has no idea what to make of it. And I think she does start to think, okay, maybe this guy is not as terrible as I thought. He's just an idiot.
Well, I mean, again, he is kind of the perfect Japanese worker archetype, really, if you think about it. Extremely responsible, hardworking, thinks mostly of his job and hardly anything else.
So his grandmother wasn't really lying.
And probably one of the reasons why the birth rate is so low. But it definitely is. He's not a bad person by any means. And the more that she finds out that he's not doing anything out of malice, but just because he really is naive about anything that's really related to actual human interaction. I think that is, like I said, I think there's an opening that things would improve as a relationship in the future.
Right. And you get the feeling that she would be able to keep him to task. There has to be a feeling of dread on her part, though, of, oh my God, if I marry into this family, I'll never get away from the old lady. But
well, like I say,
and the other, what's up? Sorry.
Oh, this was a spinoff series, huh? All right. Well, I didn't realize that it was for Zokan Young Gangan, which I have no idea what that was about. But
okay.
No, that's the magazine name.
But yeah, that's the magazine that they came from the manga in, which I would have liked to have read eventually. Well, essentially, what we've got here is what I've just gone over here is pretty much the first 6 episodes of the series, because the first 6 episodes does a couple of things. It establishes the characters, and it establishes the setting, and that's pretty much what the 6 episodes does. The other I think 6 or 7 episodes, I think it's 13 episodes, I believe. 13. Yeah, the other 7 episodes basically starts working into the relationships and character development from there on out.
Right.
So, I mean,
this is definitely an anime where you tell people, give it the first 3 and you'll pick up the story. This one, you have to get to 6 to get into the story. Because the story doesn't really go anywhere until 6.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's a slice of life series, as Brandon said, and it's character driven. Story is not nearly as integral to such series as it would be if we were watching.
Slice of life story is not the element of a slice of life. Slice of life is more character driven than story driven.
And the majority, I really do feel like the first 6 episodes felt more slice of life, and the last 6 felt more romantic comedy. Which, I mean, that goes. And I did enjoy both sections. I mean, getting the characters established. I do like the setting and some of the things that they were having to deal with, like, the people asking for crazy stuff or getting mad at them for no reason.
Yeah.
The things that I'm used to and have been used to on a daily basis. So it was kind of cool to watch that. Because most shows, anime or anything, none of them cover what I do. So this is kind of.
I do feel they missed the bingo call-out lines that I know Japan does it, but here in the U.S. we do.
Oh yeah.
Any service concept, you have the little now servicing number.
Well, it depends on where. It depends on what department you're in and whatever. I mean, technically I'm a government employee, but I work in a library, and we don't do that. We probably should. It'd probably help with the lines.
You get that many people in a line?
We do, and what the bigger thing is, and this is probably an issue anywhere you go where you have a counter. People don't understand how to line up in front of a counter.
Oh, people don't know how to. I mean, just go to a grocery store. People don't know how to get in a line there.
Yes, it's insane, but yeah. So maybe it would be good to have that sort of call out. But I did want to mention Brandon said something about the interactions or whatever. It's worth mentioning that that's one of the things that helps Yamagami turn around and think Hasebe might not be such a douche after all, is that even though he loves slacking off, he tries not to work if he can help it, there are times where he just wanders by and basically saves the day with customers because they're getting really riled up about something. They're getting really upset about something, and he knows how to defuse them. It's like I said, he is very perceptive, and he doesn't like to work on principle, but he's willing to step in from time to time.
Well, and we learned that towards the end of the series, like I said, the last part of the series is all about the relationships, which we've covered most of that with the characters. But the main one that they focus on is Lucy and Yutaka's relationship. Yeah. And we do find out that that one of his biggest secrets is that his father was the worker that approved her name. And it does bother him quite a bit knowing that that's the case, as he finds himself falling more and more in love with her as they go.
Which I'll admit was not that surprising a reveal for me at all. I was like, yay. When he said his family all were civil servants,
yeah,
and I'm looking at how his work ethic, I'm like, yeah.
And his sister is definitely also interesting.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, because it is his dad that did the issue, but his dad pointed out, well, technically it's your fault.
Yeah.
Because you got sick. I was worried about you. I had to rush things out.
So his dad technically had a good excuse, but
Pass the buck.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dad passed the buck.
Yeah. And his sister Kaoru is a minor character, but she is kind of amusing.
Oh,
she sort of glomps onto Lucy and just
I did find it hilarious because she's introduced because Lucy starts with alcohol for the first time and ends up being a lightweight. And he ends up carrying her back to the sister's place. And she wakes up seeing the sister and she's like, what, you didn't realize I was always a girl?
What was that clip you played earlier? It's a trap.
Yes, exactly.
But it's and the other, I would argue another character who's on the same level as the two Tanakas is the section chief's daughter, Kanon. Like I said, she shows up about midway through, and she's a supporting character for the rest of the series. Kaoru is more of she shows up a couple of times, but they're both fun characters in their own right. But
and really the relationship that really kind of ends up kind of happening, but not really, is their relationship. Because they kind of sort of looks at it as a possibility, but it never really goes beyond that at the end.
But they do have that one date that gets interrupted by the family.
But they do agree to go on another one.
Yes, just not yet.
So, these are things that are kind of there. And he always calls her Lucy, and it bothers her, but eventually she gets used to it and is able to take it, which is kind of also a help for her as she kind of feel her first name in a way that's not making fun of her.
Right.
But I'm not going to go into any specifics because we really do cover most of because that's the thing with Slice of Life. It's mostly character driven. So we hit the characters and we hit the episodes. But was there anything in the series episode-wise that y'all really wanted to cover plot-wise that needed to be covered?
Not really.
I mean, yeah, there's some story beats. We already mentioned a couple of them. There's the thing where basically when Hasebe gets Lucy to go on a date with him, he makes a deal with Chiharu that she can do the outfit for the date. Of course,
Because they're forcing her in a dress.
yeah,
She never wears a dress or a skirt.
right. So that, of course, gets Chiharu fired up, and she does that. And you got a couple other little bits here and there, but there. I'm trying to think if there's any other real significant story.
Well, I mean, there's the concept that Megami always wants to dress every female coworker
Yes.
and the sisters as characters in anime.
She has an obsession with a series that uses floral names, but it's clearly inspired by the Puella series.
Oh, it's a Sentai Magical Girl series, essentially. And she wants to assemble the whole team, which you do get a shot of at the end with all the characters in the costumes that she's put them in.
You do very briefly get...
So every female cast member, excluding the old woman, gets into it.
Yeah.
It was that's her obsession. That's how she loves it. And I mean,
I don't think they show that in that screen cap, but what they should. Well, she at one point, this section chief says, "Well, you could design clothes for me," and she says, "I don't dress stuffed animals." Just very. But like, there's a golden opportunity there to do a Cube cosplay for him.
There are a couple of things that are amusing in her relationship with the other guy. I mean, there were a couple of times where she's just basically, let's do it right now. like right here in the office, or when she's like doing that all nighter and he comes in to help her out, and which is one of the few like really touching moments for their relationship. Mm-hmm. She's like, animals tend to want to mate the most before they get ready to die. It's just like,
and she passes out on top of him and says pillow, and he's like, well, I'm not going anywhere tonight. But yeah, it's because she wanted to, it wasn't just an all-nighter. She said, I'm taking 3 days off from work.
Yes.
But she just straight up said, I'm taking 3 days off. And she says, don't bother me. And Hasebe knows that she wants him to check in on her, her boyfriend to check in on her. And he's like, no, I'm going to listen to what she says. But he does end up checking in on her on that last night. But yeah, there are multiple times. It's like a running gag in a series where she will shoot him a look of death because he just does not get what she is laying down. Like, she'll say something where everyone in the room knows exactly what she means, and he doesn't get it. And there are multiple times where she gives him like a death look because of how dense he is.
That's the relationship I wanted to see grow the most as it goes.
Yeah,
well, we got to see some, and I do think a longer series would have shown more. I'm sure the manga would. But yeah. All right. Well, anything else on the plot?
No, I think we got most of it.
Well, let's talk production design. I thought the animation quality looked fine to me, but I'm not the expert on this. What do you think, Brittany? How is the animation quality for this series?
It's very basic. When you kind of have a box standard look like this, it's nothing high quality animation, and it's clean. I didn't see too many errors. If I saw any at all.
Frame rate looked better than the last one we covered. The
I mean, there was a definite budget on the last one we watched.
Yeah.
and that all went to make them look pretty, which IG does. That's the way IG works. But yeah, I mean, this is very much your Fox standard slice of life romantic comedy anime out there. You could make it prettier and whatnot, but we're talking 2010. So I think that's probably what you got quality wise at that time.
So this one is A1 Pictures, and yeah, I feel like it's pretty much, like I said before, it's pretty much on par with what we would have expected from the people that did Wagnaria. It's a very similar art style. I would say it's a similar animation level, probably. It's appealing. The character designs are appealing. They're mostly realistic-ish. You know,
looking at Lucy on the manga from the Wikipedia page, she looks a little more realistic in the manga. I mean, it's definitely more cartoony in the anime look.
Right. Well, yeah. I think I'm seeing. Okay, I think I'm seeing.
I mean, the boobs are, of course, which anime is made by horny males, even if it's made by a female staff. It's made by horny males.
Granted, though, most of the females in the series do not have a particularly large bust.
Oh well, she's the brunt of most. She's the brunt of all the
big time.
Yeah.
She is not that big breasted in the manga, it looks like.
Yeah. The what was I gonna say? I don't know.
Sort of like, she reminds me a little bit of the design of Poplar in working.
A little bit.
Big chested, but different personality wise, but as far as build.
She's not nearly as short.
All right, the boss of the manga, little less cute design. So the anime, I'll give it a better design for the rabbit.
And one plot point we missed was the episode where the section chief got accidentally sold to a little girl because they were at a fair. He and Lucy were trying to find Hasebe, and they went to a fair that the one of the department's fundraiser was putting as a fundraiser. And this little girl, while Lucy's back was turned, she walks away with the section chief. And they gave her a bunny as a replacement. So luckily, when she came and found the little girl, she went up to her and said, "I'm sorry, this wasn't for sale. Can I give you this one instead?" And the girl thinks about it as hard as she can, and then she's like, "It's okay. This one's cuter anyway." Which the section chief was very hurt.
Okay, and the manga is a 4-panel.
That makes sense.
Like
actually,
a lot of
slice of life.
Slice of life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how K-On! was. K-On! was.
Yeah.
Basically that. A lot of these are. I mean, what was that one? The one with the schoolgirls going in for art. Gosh.
Azumagadaya. Oh no, sketch book.
Not sketchbook.
Hidamari sketch.
Hidamari, yes, Hidamari. Yeah. That was 4-panel too. So musically, so there's one opening theme, "May I Help You," by Kayano and Mai Nakahara, and Toyosaki, which was really cool. I mean, it reminded me a lot of the opening for Working.
And each of them trade off on the end themes, but we should note that those are the seiyuu behind the 3 main female characters.
Yeah, they trade off on the end themes. Every 4 episodes, one of the female characters takes over, but it's essentially the same song. It's just...
I can't disagree or agree because I haven't really watched Working. I've had so many other anime I've watched.
Well, the first episode is very high. I mean, the opening is very high energy.
Yeah, It is.
Both of Working's themes are very high energy.
Well, all three, if you count the third.
Well, look, either you go really, really lighthearted in a calm and easy with a slice of life opening, or you go energetic.
But this
So
is
you don't really do something else.
This is the same, again, you can tell the same people. If I'm remembering correctly, the female cast does the openers for Working, and the male cast typically has done the enders for that series. So this one, they kept it with the female cast. But yeah, you had, and which makes sense. I mean, you go, you mentioned Keon a few times. Chihaya is played by Akito Yasaki, who played Yui, I believe, in Keon. Want to say she was Yui. Yeah, Yui Hirasawa.
You just reminded me when you said Keon. There is one other thing about this which I do like about this that I do find better than a lot of current anime.
Okay.
It has adult characters. It is not all teenagers in high school.
Yeah.
Except for one. But
well, two, technically. But,
two, yeah. But all the rest of the main characters are freaking adults. All right, you go ahead. But that is something that I do appreciate.
They're mostly college age or just post-college age. But young.
It's basically when you start out those types of jobs. I mean, 22, 23 is the age you usually start out working something like that. I mean, that's when I started working, was age 23. I was the same age as they were basically when I was starting out doing this type of work. Technically, I was 22 when I had my first job working. Well, no, 21. My first job working for those types of agencies part-time. So, yeah, I mean, age definitely fits well for that type of thing when you're coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I think Lucy and Hasebe are much younger than Yoshi because, as you said before, she's been to college. She's had a couple years. What's that?
She's 24. I believe they're like 20, 22, 21, 22.
They're not more than 22, but yeah, they're probably
none of them are in their teens. That's the thing.
Yeah, they're young, but not super young. But yeah, I was also going to say, so you've got Miyoshi is played by Mai Nakahara. Lucy is Ai Kayano. I've said before, Mai Nakahara, I find it fascinating that, she is my contemporary, you could say. But some of these others, there's a good cast. There's a good overall number of folks in here. A couple of cameos, like Akira Ishida has a cameo in the first episode. So is there an English dub for this, or is it all just the
No, there's not.
Not to my knowledge. If there was one, it was never
yeah.
That's all right. It was watchable. It wasn't as bad. Like if we were doing something like Excel Saga, where I just go, I give up if I'm watching it. And I say I probably should just know the language by heart at this point. I can barely keep up with it in English. But this one I can keep up with reasonably well. There's not so much going on the screen that I'm going to miss a lot by reading it. So I'm not terribly worried about.
I rewatched some episodes because I doze off early on, the first few episodes.
What did y'all think of the ending thing? Because we talked about the opening theme, and of course there's 3 variations, but they're all the same, like visually. I do like the whole getting off of work thing, like you're pouring yourself a drink and relaxing for the night.
What? It's not like I just made some matcha tea that wasn't matcha tea, despite buying it declaring it was matcha tea.
There you go. You're making a drink. It might not be the drink you thought you ordered, but it was a drink.
Definitely not the drink I paid for.
I mean, like
Green tea, but and I can't complain there. But
the drink I
where's
had
my matcha?
Was a small mixed drink of Howler Head mixed with some Old Smoky cookies and cream to just have a nice little sweet nightcap. Which
See, you two are the ones that can actually have alcohol in their drinks. I'm stuck with the basics of tea and hot chocolate and cider.
Well, depending on it, I'm usually having maybe an espresso or something at night because it's something that'll put me to sleep. But
Espresso puts you to sleep.
Oh yeah, I'm half knocked out.
You got a weird system.
So. Well, I'm heavily ADHD, that's why. But yeah, I liked it. I like the concept of just relaxing. It's not my favorite song, but I do like it compared with the visual. It's there, and of course the opener is fun.
They're enjoyable. None of them. Neither one of them were like, I must add to my collection of songs. But none of them were like, this is irritating. So, they're okay.
Yep. There we go. Oh, but, well, I guess that's everything. So why don't we go ahead and hit favorites? What is your favorite scene? But also, what is the one thing that they did in the slice of life that kind of hit you in the I can relate to this vibes? So we'll start with you, Jacob. Favorite scene?
You said favorite scene?
Yeah.
Not
I'm
really
kind of with you there, Jacob.
What's that?
I'm kind of with you there. I'm trying to struggle on this one.
I mean, there's a lot of little moments that I enjoy, but I'm not sure that there's like a scene that rises above. I mean, the scene I mentioned before where they make the switch for the plaid bunny for the section chief and how crushed he is when the little girl said, this one's cuter anyway, that kind of amused me. And the switch on the date where the banker stops talking about Hasebe and just starts talking banking, I found that really amusing. And there were a couple little moments like that were kind of amusing. The scene where she woke up in Kaoru's bed and Kaoru tried to trick her into thinking she was actually her brother. I found that, there were little moments like that were really funny, but I'm not sure I can really pick one that is like the best one.
Was there a moment in this series that made you go, yeah, I can relate to that?
There were a few of those too, but like the whole what time is break, I could definitely relate to that. But the honestly, the whole thing, like, and they show it in the opening. I personally think the visuals for the opener are great. Like, they get a little crazy into some of the rotoscoping and the weird ass candy colored CG and whatever there. But in terms of what they do with the characters and what they're doing, and when they zoom and when they show the old lady talking to Miyoshi and they zoom in on her harried, oh my God, what have I gotten into face? Like, I feel like, and I meant to say that under the animation, that while it's not earth-shattering animation, they did do a really good job with little touches. And that was an example of a little touch that was really good. But like some of the scenes where she is just listening and trying her best to be there for these people who really are going to forget about her as soon as they leave the room. And she's I can relate. It's not something I want necessarily to relate to, but I've been there. You know?
What about you, Brittany? Favorite scene, favorite moment in the series? Something that you enjoyed?
My favorite moment probably is the scene where Megami is offered the chance to get Lucy in a dress and switches sides from being like, you shouldn't bother to absolutely, we must make her do this. So that'd be my favorite scene. Relate scene. A lot of this I relate to, but I'm gonna go with actually the date. I've had that one too many times. Where you're on the date with the banker. Where it's just like, okay, you're telling me about somebody else. Can we talk about us? Or about yourself, and then you go into about work, and it's like, okay. I'd be very irritated on that date.
So for me, definitely, I don't know. There's a couple of things that I liked about the series, like the one that at any moment when Megumi is sitting there, and I think to myself, she was going to be just that one note flat affect character, and then she just suddenly comes to life when she talks about cosplay. That just struck me as, oh, this is something. But I also really like the scene where he comes in and helps her out when she's on her 3-day binge and helps put her to bed and so on, which is really nice. It was kind of a touching scene. The one I relate to the most is definitely the grandmother talking the one person's ear off. That really, I can relate to that. I had that happen today, matter of fact. The person was just tangential and just...
Yeah, but that's your job. Literally.
Well, which, but also it's theirs as well to listen to. I mean, I'm there to get information. I'm not there to offer full-on therapy. I'm there to take information, get a basic diagnosis down, make sure that I got the right service there. So I don't have to sit and listen to them vent. And even then, venting should only go so far anyway, because venting is what you do in psychoanalysis all day, and that's why it never ends. But that's the kind of thing. And sometimes you just can't get a word edgewise. You're like, I need to collect some other information. By the way, I want to tell you about this thing and this. Like,
see, on mine, it's I need your place of birth, your date of birth, and your name.
Well, let me tell you about the place I was born. It was in 1965. And
they're like, no. The location.
Oh.
I've got 15 other cases to deal with today.
Now
that's on a light day.
See, there was this old barn in the location, but that's not where it really was. But it was right next to that area. So let me tell you about the barn. It was good. But, that kind of
State, city.
So, but that's servant service. Again, pleasant little series. One that I wanted to highlight a little bit because, again, it's one I feel like fell under the radar and one that's probably just going to fall off the map, which is sad because it's a pleasant little series. It's enjoyable. And it's a lot better than some series that, there's 1.5 billion isekai out there. Not all of them hits that still get more.
Not all of them hits. I'd say majority of them don't hit.
But but almost even the worst ones tend to get more love than, say, this series, which is sad. I feel like this was competently done. Yes, it's not the best. I'm not saying it was, but it was still enjoyable. And I do like to share little enjoyable things. And the setting was something. And I have never seen another series set in this setting. So just something fun for all of you. So I want to continue that with next month's, or actually this month's, because it'll be at the end of this month, selection, which I'm going to go with a movie because we kind of had to move late for this one, but we should be good on time for the other one. And I think a movie is enough for any of us to catch up with. And that would be Robot Carnival. I think it did get some love, and I think it is starting to get mentioned a little bit more lately because people like me kind of watched it on Sci-Fi Network when they were running their anime stuff.
It recently got a re-release from Discotheque, right?
Yep. Blu-ray.
Yep.
And so it's kind of fun to just go back and take a look at something that was definitely one of the earlier animes that I watched. And
I haven't watched this century. I don't think I've watched it outside of the 90s.
so, but one that's still not technically talked about a lot, and I think could use a little bit more. Now, I admit, my June one that wasn't going to be here, Hari, was it Hari Plusku or just Hari?
Hari, that's what you said.
Yeah, and that one I have not heard anybody talk about. So,
It also doesn't help that it's nowhere.
oh, it's way out of print. But that's the other reason why is because I have to then get it ripped and get it prepped for everybody to see. So, but we'll get that done before that's due in June. So next time, we've got Robot Carnival. So, Brittany, did you have anything going that you wanted us to know about in the audience?
Surviving pneumonia, but now I've been delayed on a lot of things, partially because of family stuff that's developed into me surviving pneumonia this week. Hopefully I will be back starting Friday with some streaming. I also got to do some recording for 2 reviews. One of Bartender, which is a remake of a much earlier season or show that is questionable on why it got a remake, but we'll go over that during the review of that. And we're going to do a review of a very odd anime that would be fine if they took the odd world stuff out, but then Japan probably would never have let it get made in the first place. So we'll talk about those as I do video releases on those.
All right. Under normal circumstances, I'd say that we had stuff going on this channel, but circumstances have made it more difficult. I did manage to get a review out because I am trying to return to the traditional review format because it takes a lot less effort. My psychoanalysis one was great when I had the time to watch a film 7 times, pick it apart, and run through it. But I don't have that level of time now. So, but I did do a review recently of the Dick Van Dyke TV movie, The Morning After, which is an exquisite film, probably the best performance Dick Van Dyke has ever done actor-wise. And if you guys can find it to watch, which best wishes on that because I couldn't find it on streaming or anything. Speaking of lost media, but definitely one of the best takes on alcoholism I've seen next to The Lost Weekend. So, but check out the review on this channel. Did you have anything major going on, Jacob? Or, I mean, I guess other than our standard discussions?
I mean, just been, pretty busy as usual. Actually just got back from an extended trip out of town. So that was a nice change of pace and kind of getting back into the grind. But yeah, that's about it. Nothing too crazy to report, I imagine.
Oh,
Okay.
that being said, hope y'all will see us.
Well, I guess we should say, for those who don't already, you should check out the Movies Galore channel that we spend a lot of time on. next week will be one of my selections, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, of course, if you want to see most of us working on something together, I recently added Amityville Webcam to SRS, their site, so you can buy from them, or you can still buy from the link below, and I'll make much more money off of it. But if you do like to buy from, something that's not Kanaki, you can do it through them. So that's now up. As a matter of fact, I've sold about even copies so far on Kanaki and that site. So, that's kind of cool. So next,
Cool.
so the Wednesday the 29th, we will be covering Robot Carnival. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Think you'll come again.